Hey there, everyone. Welcome to God Science Coffee. I'm your host, Robert Grandison, and this will be our guest for today, Chasity Campbell.
Hello, Dailey.
Dailey. Oh, my bad.
Chasity Dailey.
I don't know where
Hi,
I got
everybody. It's nice to meet you guys.
So, we met, just randomly ran into each other at the grocery store.
That's how God does things.
And then my other buddy happened to know you through like a recovery program. And it's kind of weird how that all linked up because I did not expect that connection whatsoever.
That's a God thing, man. That's
Yeah.
a God thing. He does things like that. He works things out the way they need to be worked out.
So I guess we can just kind of jump right into it. Give us a little backstory on who you are and what you do.
Well, I started using meth when I was 18 years old, and I had a 3-year-old son at the time. And it just, I kept using, I use the excuses of it. It keeps me skinny. It gives me energy, all these things. And you feel like you're getting a lot more done, but really in reality, you're not. You're just running in circles and you're not accomplishing anything. And I mean, we know that now, right? I know that now looking back, I can see that the devil tricks you and makes you think, oh, this is good. And, you could get so much more done, and in reality, it's not that way at all. And when you see people in addiction, you see how it, your body's made to rest so many hours and be up so many hours, and you can't mess with that perfect program. You're just to work and then rest. And
I will say that my tweaker friends, they hate going to sleep. It's like it sounds like a worse nightmare for them.
Well,
I'm tired.
it's we think it's fun, or we think it's making us productive, and that's all lies. Life has a balance, and you need to stay in balance with those things. You need rest, and you need good food, and you need God.
So, you said 19, correct?
I was 18.
Oh, 18.
I was
okay.
18 when I started using. I didn't stop using.
So you were freshly an adult at this point, as you could say.
Yeah, and I just kept using for 15 more years.
What do you think triggered you to do it? Was it influences? Who?
Well, a lot of people in recovery have really tough stories. They grew up in addicted homes. They were traumatized in some way, and usually that's what leads to somebody's addiction. Well, it was quite different for me. I had amazing parents. I had an amazing family, and I was just selfish. I was just a selfish person, and that's what led to all the bad things that I did, through life. And I didn't stop using until my 3-year-old was 18 years old.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I had another child in that, and like I said, I thought, I got lonely too at times, because you're married or whatever, but nobody can give you their full time and attention, nor should you expect them to. We have to find our own happiness within inside ourselves, and that usually comes from God. And so I had lots of excuses. Of course, we look for excuses when we want to do something, right? I'm lonely. When I use drugs, I don't care if anybody pays attention to me. I want to be alone so I can do my drugs. I would start to gain weight, because I quit for a year or so periodically, and then New Year's would roll around. And can't have New Year's without that, right? So I would fall right back into the same trap, and then it'd be another 2 years I'd be using. But the Lord had a fix for that. He said, "Oh, you want to be skinny?" Because it says in the Bible that He'll give you all the desires of your heart. He said, "Yeah, I'll just put you to work, and you'll get you'll be real thin from working so hard." God's kind of funny like that.
So did you have like any self-esteem issues or anything, or did you yourself want outside attention?
I think everybody wants attention, right? That's our natural flesh, and even on your God journey, I've noticed that, like, when the glory of the Lord shines through you because you believe in Him and you trust in Him, people see that. People you don't even know can see that, and sometimes, and I've heard many people on their God journey say, "Oh, I started liking all the attention," because total strangers will come up to you and say, gosh, I see this light in you, and it can make you feel good. But God will correct you, and He'll say, all right now. Actually got a cool little testimony to go with that. At one time, I was getting like a bunch of likes and a bunch of attention from my post, or, just how I was living my life, and started making me kind of feel puffed up a little bit. And I was like, oh God, I don't want any likes on my post. And immediately it stopped. And I was like, well, okay, God, maybe one. But that's just, God will take you down through there. He'll take you through some journeys to teach you some things. And He was saying, hey, back up, Chasity. Sure, you're getting all these likes and stuff, but why? Because I'm working through you. I'm making that possible. So, don't get too carried away. I can take it just as quick as I give it. So, that was one of the journeys, just one of the many.
Yeah, because it's honestly really hard to be boastful whenever you are on a God journey. Because He's very quick to humble you.
Oh, and He wants us to be humble. That's that's part of it. We're supposed to be humble and loving and caring and kind and giving. And anytime you're on a journey with God, that's going to require some time, attention, humility, and money, and things that we would like to hold precious, but He wants us to give all of that to Him and let Him do His work through us. And so there comes times when you're humbled by, He'll let you know it's me through you. You're doing it, you're a willing vessel, and that's great, but it's me through you. It's not you. I'm not special, I'm just willing. And I guess that's what makes me special is, in this day and time, you don't find a lot of people who are willing vessels for the Lord. We all want to be selfish and live our own way and do our own thing and spend our money on what we want to spend it on. And, we have to be careful with that, because one of the things I like to do to keep me grounded is to, we live in a very beautiful home and we have lots of things. And I like to just glance around at those things and think, one day none of this will be here. Those four-wheelers will be gone. They'll be broke down and old. Or our house at some point, at some time in this life, and we know this to be true, will be leveled. And another house will be built there. And so, we have to be careful not to hold material things precious to us, because that's all fading, and, will become ashes someday. So, it's good to stay humble and be grounded.
I have had this urge to just give stuff away, to just be wanting to give, even if I don't really have a lot. I've just had this urge to give.
Oh, if God tells you to give, you better give. You better give. I've got a testimony to go with that, actually, if you want to hear it. Okay, so at the very beginning of my God journey, He was telling me to serve and to give things away. I was giving things away that I had held on to for years. I loved homemade quilts. I loved blankets. I loved, I was hanging on to these coats and things that we were never going to use. And He started telling me, give that stuff away. You don't need it. So I gathered up all this stuff, and He was telling me to serve as well. And I didn't know, sometimes you don't know what that looks like when God's trying to use you. You don't know. He's telling you to serve, but you're like, how? Or, what am I supposed to do? We just got to get out there and start trying and see where that leads you, see where God takes you. So I was volunteering at a homeless shelter, and it was cold. It was real cold. And they wouldn't open the door and let them in, and I didn't understand that. I was like, these are God's children, and it's cold outside, and you're going to let them in to feed them. Why can't you just let them in now? And they were like, well, you're new here. We have a process and a way we do things, because if we let them in too soon, they'll trash the place, because not everybody that's homeless is grateful that you're giving them something. And so I was like, well, those coats I brought are mine, and I want to go out there and give those to God's people. And she's like, you're right, they are your coats, and we will let you out to go do that. And when you're ready to come back in, we'll let you back in. And I said, okay. And so I went out and started giving out the coats. Well, some people were grateful and some people were not. I want the coat he's got, and why didn't you give me a coat like him? And I'm like, well, this is all I have. But while I was out there, this one particular man come up and asked me for my wedding ring.
It's an odd question.
Well, that's something that you normally would hold precious. Even if you have a lot of jewelry, your wedding ring's kind of special. It just is. I mean, we know that. And generally expensive. And but God was really telling me to, if someone asked me for something, to give it to them. And so I, reluctantly, because I'm still a human being. I'm not any better than anybody else. So I didn't want to give it to him, but God was telling me to give it to him. God had been telling me if people, and so this was like a test, I think. And so I reluctantly took the ring off and gave it to him, and I knew I was doing what God was telling me to do, but I, still had that hesitation because we're human, for sure. And I knew my husband was going to be real mad about it when I did it. And so I prayed. I started praying, God, please let him receive this with an open heart and an open mind, and for him to understand. And for 9 months, he didn't ask me about the ring. He didn't even notice it was gone. And then one night, our friends called and was like, hey, will you go on this date with us? And they called Jason, my husband. And the funny thing is I love going out. He hates going out. But on this particular day, I was extremely tired and I didn't want to go. And I was like, man, tonight's just not the night. Any other time, I would be in. But I'm exhausted and I don't think this is going to, I'm not up to it. Not tonight. And he insisted. We got into an argument about it. So I was like, whatever, man, I'll go. But I remember going on Facebook and posting, Confucius say this won't go well, because I was really tired. And I was just kind of being funny and silly. And so we went on the date, and it was actually going pretty good. I was having a good time. Everything was rolling good. And while we're out, it was actually their decision to get a divorce or not. I did not know that when we accepted the invitation. But Jason and I had been through a lot in our marriage, and they knew that, and they wanted to know how we stayed together. So we're out and we're having a good time, and I'm talking with my hands, and he notices my wedding ring is gone. And he grabs my hand, and he looks at it, and he says, and by this time my mom had given me one of her older wedding rings she had. And he said, where did you get this ring, and where's your wedding ring? And I was like, here we go. If it's to see what God said. Did he say yes or no or wait to my prayer? I had to wait a while, and I said, well, what had happened was, and I was trying to explain to him, sometimes people don't understand things God tells you to do. It doesn't make sense to them because he's not in the same spiritual place that I am, so he doesn't get it at all. He thinks I'm stupid. And he starts telling me so. You're so stupid. He sold it for crack, and maybe he did. But it wasn't about the homeless man or Jason, or it was about God telling me to do something and me being obedient to that. God already knew what I was going to do. But maybe he was letting me know, what I was going to do. Was I going to follow God even when it doesn't make sense? Was I going to be willing to give my possessions or money that I worked for or whatever? Are you willing to sacrifice for me, in other words?
Kind of a Job situation.
So he cussed me. He insisted we leave the restaurant immediately. We left. He cussed me all the way from Little Rock to East End. I remember crying just all the way home. God said no to that prayer. So much for being a faithful servant. And so we get home, and it's Saturday night, and I immediately walk in and I post a verse on Facebook, about being persecuted for Jesus, because that's how it felt. I was being belittled because of my belief and my action on my belief, and so I did feel like I was being persecuted in a way. And so we go to bed, we're mad at each other, whatever. God said no to my prayer, this whole bit. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. And we get up the next morning, it's Sunday morning, it's church morning. We're mad, we don't like each other, but we going to church anyway. We get the kids together, go to church. And guess what they sing is special about that morning? Loving God more than silver and gold.
Oh, that's funny.
That was like in 2014. I have not heard them sing a song about that since.
I've never heard that, I'm not gonna lie.
Not only that, and Jason heard that song, and I heard that song, and I was hearing God. And then the preacher, how big the Bible is, how many verses are in there, and how tiny they're written.
Mm-hmm.
The preacher preached that day right down to that verse that I posted on Facebook the night before. And you had to read, he preached right down to it, and you had to read a little further to read the verse. But Jason did. He read past it. He seen that verse, and he knew I had posted it, and he heard that song that morning, and I've never had to hear about that since. God didn't say no to my prayer. I thought he did at the time, but he said, girl, I got you in the morning. You know, you go to bed, I got you tomorrow. I think sometimes we give up on God. You know, we think just because things aren't going our way, or our prayer didn't get answered the way we wanted it to right then, but sometimes you gotta wait. You know, and now it's one of my good testimonies that I get to tell about the Lord, how he shows up and shows out.
Yeah, that's one thing we got to learn is how to work on His time, because we never know when something's actually going to happen. We can say or plan that we know this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And be just completely wrong about it.
Well, I just read a verse about that. It said something like, don't say I'm going to do this or that, for, you know, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. You know, you say if it's the Lord's will, I will go here or go there. You know.
Because honestly, I don't really plan where I go. I don't plan where I work. I don't plan who I'm going to hang out with. I just kind of let it, I just kind of put it in His hands. Even now, I've been unemployed for about a month now, and I have had like this whole month of like freedom, which is ironic because it's my birthday month. So I had a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah.
And I felt as if I didn't have this break, I'd just be constantly working, and I couldn't try to see what I actually wanted to better myself in.
Mm-hmm.
Because at first I was like, oh no, I'm unemployed, I can't do this and that. But then I was like, all this freedom and free time that I get, at least for the time being, I can do something great with it. I might not know what it is, but I can do something with it.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to, when we put our trust and our faith and our lives in God's hands, we don't have to worry about a whole lot. And that, you know, I would love to tell people that following Jesus is always easy and it's always wonderful and life's amazing, and it is. But sometimes we have to go through some hard things, you know. That actually reminds me of another testimony. The first time I recognized the Holy Spirit talking to me, I was in church, and I was really seeking the Lord. And I feel like we do have to seek the Lord. You know, I feel like God's a gentleman. You know, we have to invite Him into our presence for Him to be there. And I'd never experienced the Holy Spirit telling me to do something. And I was in church, and I'm a front row church pew sitter, you know. And during this sermon in a Baptist church, and I don't know if you know about Baptist churches, but you don't get up and talk when the preacher's talking. You know, you sit and you be quiet and you listen, and you definitely don't get up and stand and speak during the sermon. And the Holy Spirit, which at the time I didn't know what it was, but it was lifting my shoulders up. And I was like, what is this? And it was not audible, but I just knew I was supposed to stand up and say, you're supposed to love God when things are good and when they're bad, not just when they're good. And it was just like that. It was nothing more, nothing less, and it was not audible. It's just I knew in my spirit that's what God laid upon my spirit to say. And I was like, is this me? You know, is this God? Is this me? You know, what is this? And my shoulders were lifted up, and I was pulling them down. And finally, I don't know how long I struggled with that, sitting on that church pew, but finally I said, no. You know, I'm not doing that. Because you know, that's how I grew up. You didn't do that. And this man on the back row stood up and said word for word what I was supposed to say, what God was trying to use me to say. And what makes the story even better is this man was a preacher, and he had filled in for our preacher one Sunday while our preacher was on vacation or whatever. And he had a stroke, so he wasn't good at speaking. But you best believe I heard what he said. In the back of that church, without a microphone, I heard and understood every word he said, because God was, I believe, trying to let me know what that's like when the Holy Spirit's talking to you. Because, you know, it'd be easier if he just spoke to you. Yeah. You know, don't we wish he could do, or did that? He can, but, you know, that he would do that. But, you know, that's not how that works. It's a spirit that comes on you, and you just know. And that to me was him saying, okay, this is what it's like for me to communicate with you. Now you can recognize it. And I felt really bad because I was like, God tried to use me. Somebody there needed to hear that day. Somebody needed that said. And God knew that, and he was answering that prayer probably. And I said no. A person with a good voice said no, and God said, well, that's okay. I'm going to use somebody else, that doesn't speak as quite as well as you do. But I promised God right then I would never not get up and say what he wanted me to say ever again. And I've been trying to live my life like that ever since.
I had to learn that there's essentially like there's three voices in your head. There's God's voice, there's the devil's voice, and then there's your voice.
Right.
And you got to know how to listen to God's voice. You got to be able to identify which one is him.
Sure. Well, and that's easy to do because
once you
does what this voice, is what this voice telling me, does it line up with the Bible? Is it good? It's pretty easy to distinguish. And if you're not sure, you can always go to the Word, because if it doesn't line up with what the Bible says, then it's not God. And if it's not good, then it's probably not God. Yeah, we do have to know the difference, because the devil's tricky, and he's been around a long time, and he's got schemes and tricks, and he knows exactly how to manipulate people. So it's important to know that you're following God's will and doing what he wants you to do and doing what's right. And we can make a difference in this world. Always remember that. This world's a big old place, and it's got a whole lot of people in it. But and we can get that mindset of I'm insignificant and I can't make a difference. But with God, you absolutely can. We can make a difference. You can change the world.
The main thing whenever the Holy Spirit really speaks to me is whenever it's always my fears. It's always the thing that I normally fear, no matter how big or small the objective is. It's always just that voice to just do it. Just trust me, just do it. Even if like every bone in my body would be like, no, because it's my own insecurities or maybe just rejection or whatever it is. I'm always constantly kind of battling myself internally. I've also always ran from responsibility. I've never wanted to necessarily grow up, but as I've matured more, I realized that there's plenty of people my age and even higher that haven't grown up or don't want to grow up either.
Sure, I was one of those people. I still feel like I'm 18 years old. You
have a very young soul.
I feel that way, but I'm sure a lot of people do. I'm sure much older people look in the mirror and they don't recognize the person staring back at them, because in our minds we're still young, and we're that young version of ourselves that we would like to think of. I've actually heard older people say that. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize, but I look forward to it. Why would we not want to be mature and wise and
Was there any point throughout your journey that you completely lost your faith? And when was it? And what do you remember what triggered the reaction?
I didn't really grow up in church. I thought I believed in God, and I'd walked up to the altar before when we would visit a church or something, but my most profound moment with God was when I finally just said, okay, enough of this back and forth of this, do I believe, do I not believe? I just went to the source. And I told God, I walked out on my picnic table and I stood up and I just looked up to the sky and I said, all right, here's the deal. If you're God and you're real, then you made me. Those are facts. If you're God, then those are facts. And if you made me hard-headed, and you made me a seer to believer. I don't trust people. And I'm not going to believe it because of this book. Anybody could have wrote this book. I don't know who wrote this book, And so those things won't work for me. If you want me to believe in you, you're going to have to show me you're real. And if you're God, that's not too big for you to do. And you know what I'm thinking. So then you know that that's a fact. I'm not going to believe in you unless you come down and show me your face. That's what I told God, and I meant it. And I knew that if he was God, he could handle that request. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about the Bible. And I'm still no Bible scholar by any means. You know, there's still books of the Bible that I don't even, like, if someone mentions a book of the Bible, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was a book of the Bible, you know. But I'm learning, I'm growing, and God, that request was not too big for God. And I encourage anyone, if you are not sure, ask Him. Ask Him to show you, because He'll show up and show out. And all these things started happening, just one after the other, and I'd be like, nope, that's not going to work. Nope, that's not going to work. And my sister drives from Louisiana. She drives 5 hours to get her hair cut. Now, you'd have to be dying before you wouldn't go to that haircut, right? If you drove 5 hours for it, you going to go to that appointment.
Yeah.
Well, this particular day, God had orchestrated this wonderful thing. If I think too much about it, it'll make me cry. Just for me. And she said, you know, I just don't feel like going to get my hair cut today. And does anybody here want to go in my place? And I was like, oh, me, because I don't even make hair appointments. And I know He's a hair god, you know, I want to go. And she said, okay, you can go. And so I went to this hair appointment, and he's cutting my hair. And I didn't ask him about God. You know, I was in that place still where I was like, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. And he starts telling me a story about God. And he was like, you know, my brother passed away, or he had cancer, and he was in the hospital, and he was a firm believer in Jesus, and he was dying. He was on his deathbed, and he had come to visit his brother, and his brother said, you know, Sam, if nothing else comes from my life, I want you to believe in God. And Sam said, you know, you say whatever you got to say. Sam was not a believer, and he was like, okay, you know. And he left the hospital, and his brother passed away. And so he goes to his funeral, and he said he was going to go back in one last time to see him, and he heard his brother say, don't go in there. I'm not in there. That's my body. I'm with God. And while this grown man is telling me the story, he's bawling. And I didn't grow up around men that cried a lot or, you know, expressed their feelings. And so it was strange to me. And I'm looking in the mirror as he's telling me the story, and he's behind me cutting my hair. And so I take my foot and kind of swing my chair around to look at him. And he swings me back around and finishes cutting my hair. And I don't think we said much after that. He finished, I paid, I left. And I don't know why, but that worked for me. Although I didn't know this man, I don't know, it just worked for me. That worked for me. So I leave there. I don't see this man again for a year. He doesn't know me. I don't live down there. And so there was really no way for him to know that he was the reason. His testimony is the reason that I had changed, that I had started believing in God and changed my life. And so I thought, you know, I really want him to know that he made a difference in my life. So I made a hair appointment with him. And I live an hour and a half from him, not 5 hours. So I drove to Dumas, and I went and sat in his chair, and I thought, I'm fixing to blow his mind. I'm fixing to tell him he's the reason I believe in God, and he's just going to be blown away, right? So I'm sitting there, and he's cutting my hair, and I said, Sam, do you know you're the reason I believe in God? And he didn't miss a beat. He said, yep. I was then blown away. And I'm like, how could this man know this? And I said, Sam, how do you know that? And he said, because when you came in here that day, God told me to tell you that story. You know, God does lead us to do things that can change somebody's life. And every time we say no, what if every time we don't answer God's call, that a miracle doesn't happen or somebody's life is not changed? You know, that's it's pretty profound. You know?
I have a couple points to that. With me, I wasn't a believer for a very long time. I was this dude who questioned everything. It's like, oh, that's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. All that stuff. But I've had such an emptiness within myself.
Of course.
I had emptiness, no purpose. I really was lackluster of joy.
Sure.
And eventually, I can't remember all the events that necessarily led up to it, but I couldn't cry. Like, I was probably like 19-ish, and I would only cry like once a year at this point. and it was forced. So I found myself in my bedroom floor just crying on my knees, kind of just begging God to show me something. I was like, if it's you, if you want me, or if you're real, show me what you want me to do. I will be a vessel and do your work. If for your, I guess I wanted his protection and his love. I think that's mostly what I wanted. Because there was just something within my heart and inside of me that I just could never feel with anything, whether it was drugs, alcohol, beautiful women, whatever. Nothing could really
I look at it like this. We all have a God-shaped hole in us, and we can pour whatever we want to pour in there, and we can try to shove whatever we want to shove in there, but nothing's going to fit but God. That makes us whole. I believe that with my whole being. Money. You know how many people that are filthy rich that kill themselves? Or that feel lonely? It's because there's a God-shaped hole in them that they're trying to shove money in, or drugs, and it just nothing satisfies, you know? And then when you're rich, you always have to wonder, are these people around me, do they love me because they're my friend? Or do they love me because I have money and I can buy them things, or they can enjoy my things if they're with me? You know, it's funny how that works.
I've always had this feeling that like I was going to do something great with my life. Never knew what it was. I've never had like a direct focus to what I wanted. And I can do more with less. The less that I actually have, the more I do with life.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just at a phase of my life where I'm seeing who's here with me while I'm just scraping the bottom of the barrel. So, seeing whose love is more genuine to me than those I used to think loved me, which,
Sure.
I mean, they deserted me this first sign of weakness or whatever. It's those people that stick with you whenever you thought that you were worthless that mean the most.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've never really had much materialism to give to anybody.
Right.
So I've just kind of had my personality and some advice.
Well, life is complicated, that's for sure, and it gets tough and it gets hard. And one thing I've learned though is we are all human. So even if I want to be a good friend to you, I can't always be a good friend to you. You know, I'm gonna fail you. People will always fail us at some point. You know, it's God is the only one that we can depend on. But that's okay. You know, we're supposed to forgive our brothers and sisters when they fail us, and we shouldn't put too much pressure on people to be all the things we need. You know, that's a lot of pressure. You know, like I said earlier, even from a husband or a wife, I can't be everything my husband needs, you know, in life. He can't be everything that I need. He has his own agenda, you know, he has his hobbies and things that he likes to do, and so that's putting a tremendous lot of pressure on someone to, hey, can you just be everything I need, you know, can you be just perfect and be my best friend forever, you know? Sometimes our life journey leads us away from people, and it's not that we don't love them, but that's just where our path leads, you know, so just remember that. Don't put too much pressure on people to be everything you need, because that's a lot. That's a lot to put on somebody. We can depend on God to always be there and always provide, you know, but not people so much. But you were asking me about my addiction earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I was in addiction, and of course, what comes with addiction is a hard life. You know, making life hard for other people, and I see a lot of moms roll through recovery that are just heartbroken about their children being addicted, and it really impacts a lot of people. It impacts your community, you know, because when people are really hard on drugs, they steal and murder, and you know, I hear about that even in our tiny little community. People dying because somebody wanted to steal something and shot somebody. I mean, you know, I'm sure you've heard those stories, and our parents love us and they want good for us, so when we're in our addiction, it breaks their heart in two. I mean, I've seen it in recovery because moms come, and our children, you know, I've seen it with my own children. You know, I wasn't the mom I needed to be, or the wife I needed to be, or the sister, or or the willing vessel for God. I wasn't any of those things, and so it impacts the ripple effect is way bigger than we could even imagine when it comes to drug addiction or anything like that. And it's a waste of our time, really, but I have seen God take all that bad and turn it into good for His glory. I went through that addiction and was such a bad person, and then I invited God into my life and I started trying to do His will, and at some point He's like, hey, I'm gonna need you to do this recovery group. And like I said earlier, I don't even make hair appointments. I'm that uncommitted to things. I'm a free spirit in a sense, and I don't like committing to things, because what if I don't want to do it tomorrow or next week, But He pushed me, and I said, okay, I'm in, because I've just gotten to that point in my life where I'm like, okay, I'm in. I don't know what this means or what this looks like, but I'll do it. Even if I don't want to, I'll do it. And it has just been such an amazing journey. In October, it'll be 2 years, and I never once worried about a lesson, how I'd come up with it. I never once worried about numbers, if people would show up, because when God tells you to do something, it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about any of that. He's going to work it all out, even if it's just one person coming. Maybe that one person really needed you to be there, or if it's 50, who cares? I've just really learned to put my trust in God and just have faith that He will work it out, and He has. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey, and every week He provides, because He knows who's going to be at those meetings before they even know they're going to be there, And so we really need to rely on God, especially in ministry, for the lessons, because He already knows who's going to be there. He knows what they need to hear, and there's no way we can know that. There's no way we can know, Johnny down the street, he's going to be at the meeting, and I know what he's going through, so I know what I need to teach on, It doesn't work like that, And that's why I encourage people to keep coming to recovery meetings, even after you're better, because whatever we go through in life, we're the only ones sometimes who can reach a certain person, our story or whatever we've been through. So it's so important to go to those meetings and to keep coming back, so that, because you may be the only one that can talk to whoever, about that situation. And so it's a group effort. We should always be trying to do our part in our community and in our churches and our recovery programs, and even when you're walking in the grocery store, you need to be reflecting that light. And there's been times I've been in the grocery store and I'm just, hey, how are you doing today or whatever, and they end up talking to me for 30 minutes or an hour, and maybe they really needed somebody to talk to.
I had to talk to you. There was something very strong about your presence and your aura. I did feel like I was in the room with the angel whenever.
Oh.
So it's like, I got to. Because I speak to, on a normal basis, I speak to what I call soulless people, who would just go out, live off of their own intuition.
Sure.
And it's really tough, because I can't make a certain connection to deeper spiritual levels, because they're only on a base level of whatever they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to always, just always try to be open-minded about what God's got for you. And sometimes it seems silly, or,
And you're like, why am I doing this?
Or it's really out of your comfort zone, just like standing up in a Baptist church and saying something while the preacher's talking, ooh, that's a no-no as far as I know, But if you are convicted, then I suggest you get up and do it, Because if you don't, somebody else will,
Another thing that most non-believers have against Christianity is they see all the judgmental rules of it. Let's say we have teenagers and stuff that are drug addicts, some are homosexual, some are, I don't know, robbers and thieves, I don't know. But these people, they think that, I've done too much, and even if there was a God, He wouldn't love me for who I am, because I've done these things.
Yeah.
So, and I've also noticed it in people that, I'm suspicious of being homo. sexual, but those people rebuke God so quick because they think just because I'm like this, God can't love me. But they don't understand that God is love. And He can forgive anything and make the worst situations the absolute best. You have to give Him the opportunity. If not, you're just battling against the universe, basically.
Well, the Bible says all sin is equal.
Yeah.
So how is someone being gay any different than you judging somebody or lying or every person on this earth is a sinner. I don't care if you're a preacher. I don't care if you're a teacher. I don't care if you're the Pope. I don't care who you are. Everybody has sin in their life. And so one person is no better than another, I am a firm believer in Jesus Christ. I love Jesus, but that doesn't make me perfect. Do I have sin in my life? Absolutely. Am I proud of it? No.
And you're never going to be perfect.
But you're never, and that's also a lie that Satan tells us to keep us out of God's presence. He'll say, you're not worthy, you're not good enough. Well, and I went through that. I never could let cigarettes go. I teach a recovery program, I still smoke cigarettes. I just come to the conclusion I don't want to quit, I guess. But and I started thinking, gosh, I must not love God if I can't stop doing this. But I will never be perfect until the day that I die. My life will never be perfect. I will never be sinless, no matter how hard I try. It's just, God just needs you to be a couple things. He needs you to believe in Him, and He needs you to be willing. And the longer you go down that path with Him, the more He'll start to change about you. And it's not going to happen overnight. You can't throw a seed in the ground and expect tomatoes tomorrow. That's not how it works. When you become a believer in Jesus, I think it's like, that seed being pushed into the dirt. And then you gotta water it. You gotta weed your garden, and you gotta, when you notice things in there that shouldn't be in there, and God's tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, I'm gonna need you to work on this. Then you start working on it, and then, you grow and you become better, and sin becomes a little bit easier for you not to do, but it's never gonna be completely gone. But it's a journey, man. You just gotta get on the train and start riding. That's just the God's honest truth. I know a lot of people who are gay and who love Jesus. I look at it like this. It is not for me to judge. I'm just supposed to love you and be kind to you, and we are supposed to tell our fellow man if they're living in sin. If God urges you to say something to them, then you need to say something. And otherwise, you just really need to mind your business and just live the best life you can, and don't worry about everybody else. Because when you get to heaven, God's not going to ask you what so-and-so is doing. He's going to be like, hey, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your journey. He's not going to ask you about nobody else. He's going to know what you did. What did you do for Jesus? What did you do with what I gave you? Were you selfish? Did you keep it all? Did you do your best? When I get to heaven, I want God to tell me, well done, good and faithful servant. And I want to know that I did the best job that I could. I'm not Jesus. I'm never going to be perfect. I'd like to be. I've even been disappointed in myself for not being before, but you got to let all that go, man. That's too much. That's too much to carry. I'm just going to get up every day and ask God to use me. And I'm going to let Him work out the details. And that's all you got to do. I think we complicate it a lot of times. He wants a relationship with you. I often use this example about God and how I think He feels, and I don't claim to know everything, but this is how I think it is. It's like having kids. If my kids only call me when they need something, when they need money, they need a ride, they need clothes, whatever, want to come over and have dinner, whatever, that would be disappointing. But if they call me every day, even on days they don't need something, and they talk to me and ask for my advice and love me, that's a perfect relationship. Will things always be smooth? Will they always make the right choices? No, it doesn't work that way. But we shouldn't just call on God when we need something. Can we call on God when we need something? Sure. But it needs to be an ongoing relationship every day. You know, good morning, God. I love you. Thank you. You know, will you help me through today? Will you help me do your will? Lord, I'm a willing vessel. Use me. That was one of the most powerful things I ever prayed, and I still try to pray that every day. But, man, what kind of relationship is that if you just call on Him when you need something? That's not a good, loving relationship.
I will say it does seem hard to it does seem harder to pray on those times that you're kind of struggling because you're like, oh no, you seem so stubborn about stuff, just stubborn and angry. And it seems like once you actually do get to pray, it's like a sense of relief if you actually do it and not just sit around angry about stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a waste of time to be angry but we're gonna go through that. You know, you're gonna have times where you're real mad. Somebody really done something terrible. You know, I've watched stories. I don't know if you've ever watched this movie. What's it called? Impact. And it's about a drunk driver who ran into a church van and killed a bunch of people, a bunch of church kids and men and women. And the driver was drunk. I mean, they have every right to be upset. You know, parents, these are their babies, you know, and they have every right to be mad. But it's just such a wonderful story of how something bad happened. Somebody made a bad choice. But when they invited God in to help them with that, He just, you know, it was like just flowers bloom, you know. And some of them at least were able to forgive that guy. And that made him see how much they love the Lord and what the Lord's doing for them, so much so that they could forgive someone who killed their kids or their mom or their dad.
That's a very deep level of forgiveness that a lot of people can't.
But that's what God wants, because, man, how much forgiveness have we needed? I know I've sure needed a whole lot. I've hurt a lot of people. And when you need forgiveness, it's a whole lot easier to give it. But for people who live a fairly decent life, it's a lot harder for them. But man, is it good to live that way where you're angry and bitter at somebody? Who does that hurt? It probably don't hurt the person you're mad at, because they probably don't even think about you no more. And you just carrying this with you. You just carrying this big old rock on your back. And why? What good does that do? God wants us to forgive people. And when we need forgiveness, how awesome is that to be forgiven? Whether you deserve it or not, you know. It's, if the whole world just loved Jesus and took Him in, you know, if the whole world could just get that concept, what a wonderful place this would be to live, you know. Yeah, you wronged me, but I forgive you, man. I've been there. I've done some wrong in my life. You know, I forgive you too. How wonderful would that be? How awesome, you know. But we don't. A lot of times we don't live that way. You hurt me. I'm never gonna forgive you. I'm gonna get you back.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you.
And then what happens? Then He's got to get you back, and then you got to get him back again, and that's
constant going battle that never ends.
That's awful. That's awful. You know, it's really important to. You know how they say treat people the way you want to be treated? That's what we need to do. And we need to be teaching our children that, you know, no one's going to be perfect. No one's going to always make the right choice. So forgive them and move on. Show them to do better. And maybe they'll show somebody else, and maybe there won't be so much hurt in the world, you know? Yeah.
And there's some people you can't forgive or apologize to in person, so you have to forgive yourself within and forgive that person along with prayer. If not, it kind of just comes back. And that sucks, not being able to be like, hey, I'm sorry to someone, because the people we hurt the most are the ones that we loved.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Well, you just have to do the best you can, you know, if you can get forgiveness. And, you know, we have to remember not everybody's on the same level of maturity as we are. I may be really good and content and really excelling in some areas in my relationship with God and on my journey with God, and somebody else might excel at other things but not be suffering over here a little bit. You know, we have to be careful not to judge people on where they're at with God. You know, I was well into my 30s before I started looking for God. You know, we can't expect everybody to be where we're at spiritually, because we're all on a different timetable. You know, we just have to kind of let things go sometimes and just pray for them to reach that level, you know, when the time's right. Because God will work on different things at different times, and you just, when He's telling you, hey, you really need to grow up in this area, you know, about being angry or letting this go. One of the most impactful parts of my journey was forgiveness. You know, that really made the biggest difference in my life. Man, it really took a lot of weight off of me when I learned to forgive people and move on. Because people aren't always going to do right by you, but that's okay. You know, you can't carry that. It's too much. It's too heavy. You know.
I've had like a great level of revenge of me.
Oh yeah, haven't we all?
It's really hard to let go because you have to be the one to stop it. Because if you don't stop it, it's just gonna forever continue.
Yeah.
Because some people thrive off of drama and
oh sure,
all that stuff. Like they literally survive off of negative attention
Mm-hmm.
getting to them. That's
or what's going on with so and so, or you know, I can get caught up in that still sometimes. You know, you see Facebook posts and somebody will say something real crazy, or I'm about to post something about so and so, and you watch it. You know, it's easy to get drawn into that, but you have to be careful. You know, we're human. We're gonna feed into that sometimes, but you have to be careful. At recovery, we always say people, places, and things. You know, you have to be careful what you watch, because think about it: the more bad stuff you watch or listen to, the easier, more comfortable you feel around that type of stuff. You know, if I'm only putting wholesome music in, then that's probably what you're going to get out when you get squeezed. You know, when you're under pressure, whatever's inside is going to come out. Because anybody can put on a good brave face and, oh, I'm a good person and I live good. But it's when you're under pressure, when something bad happens, or you know, you have a traumatic thing happen, or whatever. When you're put under pressure, whatever's inside is gonna come out. You know, because he may put on a good shell, but it's when you get squeezed a little bit, whatever's inside comes out. You know, you get to really see who people are when they're under pressure. You know, because it's easy to act calm as a cucumber until you're squeezed a little bit. You know, and we have to be careful what we're putting in, because that's what you're gonna get out when you're under pressure.
Yeah, I've seen people that like specifically have a personality just for hanging out with you. Like that's not who like they really are. That's just who they want you to think they are.
Yeah.
I've seen that way too many times, and like I'd be suspicious and like I know you're a totally different person as soon as you leave me.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you're putting up this.
That's just human nature. You know, it's human nature. A lot of people dress up and go to church and put their best foot forward. You know, it's a show, but God sees the real us. He sees what's inside. But you have to be careful what you listen to and what you watch and what you say. And it's just, man, I can tell you how important it is what you listen to and what you watch and the people you're around.
Yeah, that's what your brain gets used to.
Sure, and if I'm constantly listening, what TV? Let's just use TV as an example. If I'm constantly watching shows where they're cussing and they're being hateful then I'm going to be comfortable doing that. It's going to be more acceptable to me. I'm going to think that's how it is. But if I'm watching, I done got hooked on Leave It to Beaver. But it's wholesome. They talk about God. It's always a little life lesson in there for parents and for kids and for friends. And so that's what I'm watching. That's what I'm feeding myself. I'm feeding myself good. I'm listening to, you know, Christian music, and I'm praising and worshiping the Lord when I'm listening to it. And it makes me remember how great God is and how big and mighty He is and what wonderful things He can do. But You know, there was a time in my life where all I listened to was trash. And when you listen to that trash, it makes you want to be trashy.
Like Boot Scoot Boogie?
I mean, like, you know, hardcore rap where they're cussing and talking about gangster and, you know, clubbing, and then that makes you want to do that type of stuff. And, you know, it's just what you put in is what you're going to get out. You really have to protect yourself. If you want to live a good life and a good, honest life, and, you know, you just do. If I'm listening to sermons instead of trolling on Facebook seeing who's gossiping about who, you know.
Yeah, you get a lot more out of that.
Yeah, you learn so much more. And I know to a lot of people that sounds boring and whatever. You know, I was there. I've been there in my life before where I wasn't interested in, you know, my friends would invite me to church and I'm like, I'm good. I believe in God. But I ain't really trying to do the church thing. You know, a bunch of hypocrites up in there. And people say that, but I just heard somebody at recovery say, you know, that I see people at the church judging, and I was like, oh, kind of like you're judging them for judging. You know, you're guilty of what you're talking about. And how many times does that happen, you know? I know I went to post something on Facebook, and before I could post it, I had to think, ooh, I do that too, actually. I really shouldn't be saying anything. You know, we're all guilty of judging, whatever, you know, one way or another. We're all guilty.
You know how you say what you put in is what you get out?
Mm-hmm.
Well, soul control is directly linked to mind control. So if you can control somebody's mind, you can control their spirit as well. So that's why they implant so much trauma, so much war, so much hate, us versus them.
Sure.
That's why they're constantly pounding it into our minds to get this division within our spirits.
Of course, and that's what the devil wants. He loves division. He loves it. You know, politicians love it.
Yeah.
Because they're not of a good spirit. You know, some of them. I'm not saying all of them because that's obviously not true. But you know, it's there's good and bad people in everything. There's good and bad people in the church. There's good and bad people in every culture. There's good and bad people in every job position. You know, and you just want to try to live a good life. And they say you are the sum of your top 5.
The top 5 people you're around?
Mm-hmm. And I believe that. The more I surround myself with, you know, there are some conversations I can't have with just anybody, like on a deep spiritual level, because not everybody has experienced God on the deep spiritual level. That guy I told you I was talking to this morning, we talked for 4 hours and we didn't talk about nothing but God and testimonies, just giving each other testimonies. And, you know, we're sharpening against each other. He's giving me testimonies that make me stronger and have more faith, and I'm giving him testimonies that make him stronger and make him have more faith. But there are some conversations I can't have with just everybody because they don't get it. They're just like, oh, this girl, it's crazy. She thinks God does what?
Yeah, I know you can't tell people.
You know, we all need some iron in our life, and if you don't have that, you can't go sharpen a blade out in the dirt, man. You can't, a knife blade, you can't go sharpen that out in the dirt. You need something sharp to make that stronger. And that's just how it is for our Christian journey. You got to get you some folks that believe and that can sharpen you right back, you know? Because I can't be hanging around with dirt all the time and expect my knife to get sharpened, you know? It's not going to happen. I don't care how much I rub it in the dirt. It's probably going to make it duller.
That was beautiful.
You know? That's a fact. That's something I've learned. And you know, the funny thing about your journey with God, you're never going to be done till you're dead. You're never going to be done. I don't care if you're 98. There's still something you can learn. There's still a lesson you can learn.
And also, since I walk with God, I fear death. I don't fear death at all.
I know, right?
It's not even like a really concern.
Oh yeah, I used to be scared to death of dying. Like I didn't want to go anywhere. You know, not that I was like super crazy, like not go anywhere, but I would start to go somewhere and think, oh man, what if I have a wreck, or what if I never come home, or you know, I didn't let it hinder me too bad, but you know, if we are really truly believers in Christ, we should be ready. Whenever He's ready, we should be ready. You know, I used to pray the prayer, God, please let me raise my kids. I don't want anybody else raising my kids. You know, if you take me just right after they get, you know, big enough, then I'll be okay with it. But we have to trust that whether we're here or not, God's going to take care of our kids. And, you know, just while you're alive and still can, pray that God will reveal himself to them. I tell my littles all the time, don't believe in God because I'm telling you he's real. Ask him to show you, because I know he can do that. He did it for me. He can do it for them. So I encourage them. If you're not sure, ask. I tell people, don't believe in God because I say believe it. Don't even believe in God because of the Bible. Ask him. That was one of the most profound things I ever did.
Once I became a spiritual warrior, I learned that one of the keys to doing this is keeping your faith, because most of the things in this world are meant to deceive you and also make you believe that God isn't real.
Sure, you know how many people don't believe in God right now?
Most of the population, because they think it's a logical explanation.
There was a thread on Facebook in our own community right here in East End, and my heart just hurt. Which I used to be there, I was one of them. But it made my heart hurt to see people just one right after the other in our community. I don't believe in God. That's so stupid. I can't believe you believe in a magical sky daddy. And I was like, wow, that is right here in our own community that people don't believe. And I've been there, so I get it. I 100% understand. But it was, it's pretty profound to me how many people
You know what sin that is?
are on a fast track to hell.
It's pride. The sin of pride whenever you don't reject God's love.
Well, we live in a world that is fast-paced and it's just, there's a lot being thrown at us. Our phones. Do you know how many hours a day people spend on their phones?
All day long.
And I don't mean looking at sermons or looking at Bible verses. I'm talking about just
Scrolling,
trash, just straight trash, just
Yeah, it just implant that into their
but
mind.
that's the devil. That's the devil. Just look over here. Don't
study all this useless.
Don't go study your Bible. Look over here. Ooh, this is funny. This is hilarious. My kids watch videos, and I'll just be walking through the living room and just stop for a minute and watch, and it's just trash. It's just trash. It don't even make no sense. A lot of it. It's just girls talking high pitched squeal and saying nothing that makes sense. But my kids are just But that's just, we live in that type of world where the devil's just flashing. Ooh, look over here. Don't. And it's working.
A lot of people don't know the verse whenever Jesus says that Satan is the ruler, the prince, or the god of this world. The reason I say all three, because it changes in the different Bibles.
Sure.
But they don't understand that Satan is the ruler of this world until Judgment Day.
He is. And we have to be real careful down here. Not to get caught up in all that and not to lose our focus. Because following Jesus is not always easy, and sometimes it's lonely. A lot of people, and that sound, you would think that sounds crazy, but a lot of people don't understand God and the Holy Spirit and how that works, and that we really do serve a mighty God who can move mountains and part seas, and I believe in that God. I think a lot of people go to church and they believe in God, but they don't believe in a mighty God who can do those things. Like, they read it and they're like, he did that back then. I believe he can still do that today. I believe if he wants to, he can, and if that's his will, he'll do it. I believe in a magical God. I do. I've seen what he can do. I've experienced it. But you know why I've experienced it? Because I ask him. Come into my heart. Show me, Lord. Show me. Teach me. Use me. God's not going to force you to do anything. You have to be a willing vessel. And the more you invite him in, and it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes that's going to mean giving up that money you work 5 hours for because so-and-so needs help. The dryer went out or whatever. Or I don't even know this guy, but he just asked me for $20. I don't know what he's going to do with it. I don't care. If God presses it upon my heart to give it to him, I'm going to give it to him. And I don't care what he does with it. That's none of my business. I need to be about God's business. And if God tells me to do something, I need to do it. And I know that, sometimes you're not even blessed on this earth for things. Your willingness for God. Sometimes you have to wait till you get there. But I feel like I'm in a really good spot right now in my life where if I die tomorrow, God would be like, good job, girl. And I hope that I stay that course. But you can get distracted. I've seen spiritual good. I mean, I used to have people in my life where if I want a prayer answered, I'd go to them. Because the Bible says God hears the prayers of the righteous man. And I knew they were righteous, and I knew they were trying their best to live in God's will. And every time I asked them to pray for something, it would come to pass. God hears the righteous man's prayer.
I don't think I ever really asked people to pray for me, maybe like once or twice. But whenever I was living for the world, I was always around angels and I didn't notice it.
Right.
So there was always people praying.
Yeah, you had
for
the
me.
blinders on.
Yeah. There was always so many people praying for me and stuff to find God. And I was unaware of all this because, I was very stubborn, insanely stubborn.
Blind to godly things. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't understand some of the stuff I talk about or go through, or they think I'm crazy. But that's okay, because I don't care what people think about me. I want people to have a good opinion of me, but if they don't, that's okay, because I know who needs to know knows what's in here and what my intentions are. And that's what matters.
I'm going to tell you about how I lost my faith.
Okay.
All right. I believe I was like 12 or 13, about to start going through puberty, becoming a teenager. And I was always forced to go to church on Sundays, and I hated that because I only had 2 days off. So, I wanted to watch cartoons. I didn't want to go to church.
Oh, my kids are going there.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, forcing your kids to, go to church all the time, it will actually have the negative effect because they're living in a world that tells them the complete opposite of what this is telling them. So, of course, they're going to reject it, especially because they see their elders doing it and stuff. They're like, what do they know? But with me, I had my oldest brother on my mom's side. He was gay, and he was probably like 26, but openly gay. He grew up in like the 90s, whenever it was real rough to be.
Oh yeah, it wasn't as openly accepted as it is in the world today.
Yeah, so he tried to kill himself about a week or two before he actually did, but I think whenever he did kill himself, it was on accident because of like the pill mixtures.
Sure.
I don't think that time was on purpose.
Yeah.
I think it was just a release. So he went to like a rehab for like a week or two because he was suicidal, came back, and it was 6th grade, and my brother was the most kindest, loving. He would help anybody in the world.
Right.
And the weird thing is he actually did have a meth addiction most of his life. I didn't really know this because I was just a little kid.
Yeah, you didn't get it yet.
Yeah, and I knew that my gay big brother was the sweetest, nicest person I could ask him in the world for anything. And my other brother you couldn't really ask him for anything, and they were only a year apart. So 6th grade, the day before, he had done something very special for me, and then the next morning I go in the living room and I see him foaming from the mouth on the couch, and I've heard stories of people dying and stuff, so I knew that he was already dead. But I didn't have no emotional reaction to it. I was just like, yeah. Because that wasn't exactly my second time being around a dead person. My grandma also died whenever I was like 3 or 4 babysitting me. So I've just always kind of been like, around that stuff.
Yeah.
And then follow up, time being, funeral passes, all this stuff. Now my brother was in the church hard. My brother was in churches hard, but he had a very hard time finding churches that accepted him at least for who he was.
Yeah.
And one of the things that got left for me was his Bible, which I don't really want to say what I all done to that. It's because I blame God for all my problems. I blamed him for everything.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people that go through that.
Every time something bad happened to me, I was blaming straight to God. So I went to church, and the preacher was talking about how gay people can't get into heaven. And in my young adolescent mind, I was like, this is the sweetest, kindest person in the world who actually follows this specific religion so hard. And you're going to say that this person didn't have their soul right and get right with God to make it into heaven? That was like my key indicator to just like say screw all this, because I hated being forced to go to church.
Yeah.
It completely went against the natural love I was taught of how to love everyone. And also I just sit around, and just watch science stuff and be like, oh, well, this and this and this, and connect dots. I did everything in my own mind to accept the fact that God was not real.
Right.
And I debated it forever. And that was whenever I kind of went down this other
I'm gonna
path.
believe in God. You mean, is that the path you're talking about? Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I was definitely there. I didn't believe, I've been there. I know how that feels. That's why, as far as my atheist friends go, I don't judge them, because I get it.
Yeah, you get it.
I've been there. I didn't believe.
It's
That's why I think the most powerful thing you can do is just ask God to show you. Don't believe because I'm telling you. I don't even want my kids to believe because I'm telling them. I want them to experience what I've experienced. I don't want them if they just go off my word that God's real, then that's not a whole lot to stand on. But if you ask God to show you, He'll put them special glasses on that you can't take off. I seen a TikTok on that. It said when the universe picks you, but I use it as when God picks you. It's like you get this special pair of glasses and you can't take them off. But there's 2 rules. He said you can't take them off and you can't force anybody else to wear them. And I like that. I like that analogy. Because once you know that you know that you know, like you've built on a firm foundation. If God shows you He's real, that's pretty firm. It's a pretty firm foundation. Because I believe with 100% of my heart that God Himself showed me He was real. That's pretty strong.
And then it's just up to you to accept it or reject it.
So now there's no going back. There's no going back, because I can't say, I have so many testimonies that backs up God that I can't deny His existence. That's pretty profound, There's nothing that can happen. There's nothing that could happen. Nothing that would make me not believe, because I know that I know that I know. Nothing can shake that. No traumatic event, no bad thing in this world that could prove to me that that's not a fact, because God has shown me too much.
He had to physically, mentally, and spiritually completely destroy me for me to even try to knock on the door.
And sometimes he has to do that. Sometimes he has to do that, and I try to warn people. Don't make God show you the hard way. Because He's going to. It says in the Bible, every man will know, and they'll have to make a choice. Every man will be sure God's real at some point, and he'll have to make a choice which way he's going to go. But God promises us that everybody will know. But you get to choose which way you go. He gives us free will. It's our choice. He's not a puppet master unless you want him to be. I hand him my sticks and say, "Here, God, use me," because I don't know what I need to be doing, or whatever. But we're not puppets. We are in control of what we do, and He'll lay something on our heart and say, "Hey, Chasity, go say this to this person," or "Stand up, Chasity, stand up in this church right now and say this." And I get to choose every time, every day. Will I? Will I do what God's telling me to do? And I'm going to promise you something. It always goes a whole lot better when you do. It always goes better. Is life going to be perfect for me? No. Am I going to have to go through trials and tribulations? Sure. But when I have Him, it's going to be a lot easier to bear. The burden's going to be a lot easier to bear, And I do believe we live in a time where it's going to get bad. It's going to get tough, and we got to be ready. And the only way to be ready is to have God, because life is tough. People we love die. Sometimes we ourselves suffer. But I wouldn't rather do that any other way than with God right by my side, I couldn't make it through this world without Him. I'm sure of that. And I've had suffering, I've had to suffer. I went through this period of like months of teeth pain, and it was excruciating. It really took me to my knees. I remember my husband one night touching me because he knew how much pain I was in. He said, "Let me pray for you." And I was like, "Oh, just don't." I was in that bad of a spot. As much as I love God and believe in God, could nobody help me but God right then. I didn't need Him to pray for me. I needed God, And I remember just crying to God, I remember saying, "God, why me? Like, I know people that ain't even trying for you. I know people that don't even acknowledge you. Why am I hurting? I love you and I'm trying my best. Why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to hurt? I'm out here just trying to do my best. I'm putting my best foot forward, and I'm having to go through this. Why?" But, we are no better than Jesus. Jesus had to go through a whole lot of hurt and suffering. But sometimes He just needs to remind us that, or maybe it's the devil doing it, I don't know. But whatever it was, it made me really rely on God only. He was the only one that helped me through that. I'm going to tell you something. God made me do this recovery group. And during this months, it was mid-October to mid-February, I was in the worst pain of my life. It was day and night, keeping me up at night, hurting all day. And He would still relieve me of that pain to study for lessons. And I would come in here to do the lesson, and when I'd walk through them doors, I'd stop hurting. And I wouldn't hurt the whole time that I was doing it, and then I would start hurting again as soon as I left here. But He provided what I need to get what He needed me to do done. God will do that for you. If He has a purpose for you, He'll give you the grace and mercy and the wisdom to do it. That's how it works. That's how it's worked for me.
He's always put me around, He's always put me around godly individuals, mostly they're more older and mature than I am. Because once I started actually really getting into this, all of the mentors He sent me was over the age of 50, but they all had such young spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as if their life was just starting all over again. As soon as they hit 50, they were just starting a new one. And I guess I do kind of have a fear of getting old, but I don't feel like I'm necessarily going to age the worst. But I know I'm still going to keep this really young soul to me.
Well, we just can't focus too much on, we live in such a society that your looks matter and, things like that. And we're human, so it matters to us too a little bit. But in the big scheme of things, it's really nothing. That's silly to even worry about what I look like. I want to know. I want to know how I make other people feel. Are they seeing God through me? That needs to be their focus. Not how we look or, oh, am I getting a wrinkle? Let me go get some Botox. That's just silly. That's silly. It's human nature to think about those things, but we shouldn't. I want to look however God needs me to look to do whatever He needs me to do, or I want my body to be in a certain physical shape for whatever He needs me to do, there have been people, and I've been in this situation myself where, one of my kids was put in the hospital because somebody in that hospital needed witnessing to. Yeah. So sometimes that means that, you may have to be sick or injured to witness to somebody. But I have seen that. One of my own kids was put in the hospital because this lady down the few doors down needed somebody to come tell her it was going to be okay, and that I'll tell you the story. So one of my daughters, it I swear I seen her eat something, put something in her mouth, and then she was having trouble breathing. And so I insisted we take her to the hospital. And while we're in the hospital, and these are trained professionals, right? They do an x-ray of her throat and they say, yeah, there's something in there. Okay, I thought I seen her eat something and now she's having a hard time breathing, you know? And then he sees it, he shows me on the x-ray it's there. And we're in the hospital. And I'm on the elevator. I went home and got some snacks and I think showered maybe, and I come back. And I'm on the elevator going up. And this man's in the elevator with me. And he said, oh, them snacks look good. And I was like, oh, you know, because I overdo everything. I bought 2 boxes of everything. I had more than we needed, you know. I was like, well, here, take some. And he's like, no, I was just kidding. And I was like, no, take some. You know, I have way more than enough. And so he takes them, and he gets off the elevator, and he goes a different direction than me. So I go back to the room, and it wasn't long, here he come. And he said, hey, my son's in the hospital down here, and he wants to thank you for the snacks. Would you mind coming down here? You know how strange that is? How did he find me, first of all? God let him down there. That's how. And I was like, I didn't want to. I was tired. But I was like, sure, you know, I'll go. And I had met a man outside smoking, a different man. And we got to talking about his daughter. And he said she was in hospice care, which means you're dying. And I think I even asked the doctor on the elevator, what does hospice care means? And he said that's, you know, where you go for they can take care of you till you die. And as this man's walking me down to where his son is at, this other man walks past me. And you know how sometimes you can tell there's certain sections of the hospital, like the maternity ward or whatever. And this man was coming out at the exact moment me and his father were walking. And I realized he's walking me down here to his son who's dying because he's in hospice care where this other man's daughter is. And it took all I had in me to keep from starting to cry because I realized when we passed that man what that meant. He's taking me to talk to some boy that's fixing to die. And that's pretty big. I mean, you know, that's a lot. But I sucked it up because I knew I didn't need to be down there crying. So I sucked it up and got myself together. And when we passed those thresholds today, he looked at me and he said, I guess this is where you go when you're about to go home. And I knew what that meant because of that other man walking by me. You know, that's big. That's God stuff. Think about the timing it took for some man I had met a day before probably to be walking past at the exact moment he says what he says to make me realize where we're going. So I walk down there and meet this family and meet this boy, and he just, you know, he's just bragging about the snacks or whatever. And I'm trying to talk to him and keep myself from crying. And of course they're all, you know, trying to do the same because they know that he's there and he's going to die. And the mom, I kept going to visit them even after my daughter got out of the hospital. Turns out there was nothing in her throat at all. God just needed me to be there. You know what was in there? Her hyoid bone that's supposed to be there. It's what those professionals were looking at. But it was a God thing, so that's all good. He made him see what he needed to see to keep me there. But then one day I kept going back to the hospital, like driving up to the hospital and visiting this family while they were there. And one day I went up to visit and I was fixing to walk in and the mom kind of stops me at the door and she said, this is not a really good time. We're really having to make some big decisions here and we're having to decide whether or not to do surgery on him. And he could die if we do the surgery and he could die if we don't. And we don't know what to do. And I was like, ma'am, you realize that if God's ready for your son, it won't matter what you decide. Whether you do the surgery or not, God can use doctors to heal people, but he don't need them. He can use them, but he don't need them. And so don't put so much pressure on yourself because it doesn't matter what you decide, God's will is going to be done. You know, you're putting a lot of pressure. We got to remember we serve a big God, way bigger than we are. And whether or not you decide to do the surgery, his will's still going to be done. So this really ain't as big of a decision as you think it is. It's in God's hands. And you know, she needed that comfort. And God sent me there to give her that. You know what I'm saying? Like, she needed to hear that from somebody, because, I mean, it was just their family there, and I'm sure their family probably didn't even live around there, so it wasn't like a whole bunch of family could come in and give her advice. You know, it's just them. They're dealing with a lot, going through a lot. And I think that probably gave her great comfort. And they chose not to do the surgery, and the little boy went home. He lived.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, sometimes God will have to put you in places maybe that you don't want to be, or in situations you don't necessarily want to be in. Did I want to be at a hospital? No. Was there really even any valid reason for me to be there? No. But God needed me to be there because He knew I was going to do what He wanted me to do. And that is not a coincidence that I had met that other father who told me about his daughter dying, who I'm sure probably did die. That he had put me out there to talk to him, so that when the time came, just the right time, that I would comprehend where we were going and what was happening. You know? That's God, man. I just see God just all around me, but you have to open your eyes to be able to see that type of stuff, or you'll miss it. You know, you'll miss a lot. You gotta have your eyes open and your heart open and be willing. You know, I see that stuff all the time, and I experience it all the time, and then I need to put myself around people who are going to remind me, you know, because there has been a time or two, I'll admit, that I've thought, man, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wasting my time? But then I remember my testimonies and the testimonies of other people, iron, and it keeps me grounded. And we need that. We need some grounding, because, man, the devil's tricky. He'll try to trick you and fool you, you know. And that's why it's important to have strong people of faith around you. If you've got a strong faith, for sure you need to have some other people that are strong in faith and that can lift you when you need lifting, and encourage you and remind you how good God is and how big He is.
I'm generally surrounded by people who more or less come to me for advice about this stuff, because I went very hard into it, because like I felt like that's my way of redeeming myself. Like, all right, I spent so much time ignoring you,
Yeah,
I
right.
might as well.
Like you're having to make up for
Yeah.
lost time.
Yeah. People older, younger, and everybody kind of, they want me to kind of show them to God, or whatever, however you would go about it. And there's some people, and I'm just like, so I can't show you everything. You got to kind of ask Him. That's up to you. He's not going to teach you the same things He taught me.
Oh yeah, no, our journey is very unique and very different. And you know, I mean, think about how amazing it is that we are all so different. We all have different fingerprints, every one of us. How crazy is that? You'd think at least every now and then one would match, right? But no. We're that different. We're that special.
Not even twins have matching fingerprints.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You know, how crazy is that? How big is that? That you are special in your own right for whatever God needs to do through you. Whatever He needs to use you for, you are built just for that. You're where you were born, where you grow up, where you end up moving, all that. All that is created for your special purpose, and that is pretty awesome. That's pretty great, you know. But I do know that we have a God that loves us and cares about us, and we are very special to Him. And unfortunately, there will be people who don't make it into heaven. You know, there will be preachers who won't make it into heaven.
It's awesome at this Pentecostal church, but
I've heard a story, and I don't remember if I watched a video or it was a show or a movie, but it was like supposed to be a true story, where this preacher got saved at his own sermon. But how great though that he could humble himself and admit, I've been up here preaching and teaching to y'all, and I'm not saved.
Yeah,
I'm going to hell if I don't do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, how great is that?
Yeah.
How big is that? You know how hard that was for him, probably?
He put everything on the line.
But he knew he had to do it.
Yeah.
And that is a great testament of, you know, he didn't realize it on stage and then go in a quiet place and ask God to save him. He knew he needed to do that. in front of his congregation. I think that's beautiful.
People's minds were probably blown. It's like,
Right? Wouldn't your mind be blown? I've been listening to this preacher for years, and now he's getting saved on his own sermon. You know? But that's great. That's great that he knew. Better for him to admit than to go to hell living that lie. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And you best believe there's going to be some preachers go to hell.
My neighbor, they're from New York. And they've been married like 60 something years. And the husband was a preacher, and she was always just a preacher's wife. So
Yeah.
I kind of got to see what it's like in preachers' families.
Yeah, they're not perfect either. And they're lying if they say it is, you know. But you do know teachers and preachers are held at a higher standard. God says that in the Bible.
Teachers and
You will be
preachers.
judged more highly. You will be judged more harshly. You know, we're supposed to live more upright and more in line with God. I mean, it's still not going to be perfect, but it says preachers and teachers will be judged more harshly. So we need to remember that, you know, because, I mean, isn't that what we are? When we're telling people about God, we're teachers and preachers. So we have even a bigger responsibility to try to walk a right path. I remember the first time I read that, I was like, dang. That's a lot, you know. Because I'm just thinking, but you know, at some point, if you walk close enough with God, you'll be a preacher or a teacher in your own right, you know, in some way. So we have to remember, He's going to expect a little more out of you. And that's a lot of responsibility to take on. But I know with God's help, it'll be all right, you know. He'll work it out. I have faith.
Have you ever heard of a preacher named John Ramirez? He's on YouTube. He's an
I don't watch a lot of YouTube.
He was an ex-Satanistic preacher. Like, he grew up in a family of witches and warlocks.
Sure.
And he was like the head priest of the Satanic Church in New York. And a young preacher in your own free time, you'll figure out more of a story. But he ended up giving his life to God. Now he goes around preaching Jesus' word, and he is super like on it, like strict in his preachings.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I was on that side way too long and deep that I've met people
who've been on the other side, and let me tell you, if we believe in God, we have to believe in the devil too, right? If you believe in good, you have to believe in evil. And evil can be just as powerful. Not as well, I say just as powerful. It's a little below, but there is power in evil, and there's power in God, and we do have to choose. And those people who do that stuff, I believe stuff does happen with that too, because there is a devil, and he does have reign over this earth. So, you know. But you get to choose which way you want to go. I want to be on the winning team, I'm just going to say. No. I want to be a winner.
There was something... So, there's... You know demons, right? Demons communicate each other.
I believe in demons, absolutely.
They communicate with each other through sigils. And anagrams and signals and stuff like that. But there's 72 sigils to summon and conjure different demons. Now, if you don't know this, I looked up like 72 seals of power, and it honestly looked like it was a Christian book. Like, it seemed like this book was based around Christianity or whatever.
Well, isn't that exactly what evil is? It's just the opposite.
Yeah.
You know. I don't even study any of that type of stuff. I 100% believe in demons. I've actually experienced that. It wasn't because I was trying. Well, I guess I was in a way. When I was on drugs.
Up for a couple days too, probably.
No.
Oh.
When I was in my addiction, I experienced things where I knew that there were demons in my house, and it wasn't because I seen them, it's because my kids did. And I felt them, but I didn't see them. But I had a little kid who did.
And their spiritual eyes are more open. So
well, all I know is I felt it. I felt like there were demons in my house, but also I was on drugs, so I figured I was probably just,
Out of there, yeah.
Well, when your sober 3-year-old tells you they see something in your house, and she had no reason to be afraid of anything like that, or we didn't watch stuff that had that in it, so there was no reason for her to make that conclusion. And she was looking up in the corner, and she wrinkled her face. And mind you, I already felt this presence of evil in my home. And she looked crazy, and she looked frightened, and she was looking up in the corner, and I was like, what? And I felt it, but I wanted confirmation because I knew she was seeing what I felt that I couldn't see. And I said, what are you looking at? She said, I don't talk about it. Like, she wasn't even talking, real great at the time. And she said, I don't talk about it. And I was like, I wanted confirmation because I knew I felt it, and I wanted to know what she saw because I felt like I knew what she saw. And I was like, it's okay, you can tell me, like, what do you see? What is it? And she just shook her head, and I was begging her, because I wanted to know that she was seeing what I felt. And she said, scary grandma. And she's looking up at the corner and nothing's there. Now, I might have been on drugs and, not in my right mind, but she's just a little kid that's sober, so you can believe what she's saying. And that gave me confirmation, and I knew, I was like, ooh, something got to give here, because it didn't feel good, and it didn't feel right, it was scary to me. And
most adults, there's,
I believe in demons, 100%.
Spiritual eyes closed because of sin, and that's why we can't see those things. That's why, like, the younger the kids are, they can see those things because they still live in such innocence.
Well, I didn't necessarily invite it in like how people like do Ouija boards or they, try to conjure spirits. I didn't do it in that sense, but the way I was living, I was inviting that in. So yes, sir, I believe in demons, just like I believe in God. I believe that's a real thing, and I believe those have power too.
I've honestly wanted to be, I thought about being like an exorcism or something like that. So that's why I've studied those branches and stuff.
Yeah, then you have to go to the Catholic Church.
50-50.
The Catholic Church is who they use to get out demons. No. We have that authority and power to cast out demons. The Bible says that.
In Jesus' name?
Yeah. Just his name has power. How awesome is that?
Whenever I would be around like ungodly people, or I'd feel like I was in a situation where like people were mentally judging me or whatever, criticism, I would make them say the word Jesus, and I could feel the entire atmosphere change after they said it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Even if they weren't a believer or whatever, I would just make them physically say it.
Well, that's pretty cool that we have, God gives us that power. That we can possess that power just by calling his name. That's pretty awesome. I think it is. It's exciting, actually, Well, I'm really glad we met.
Yeah.
I'm really glad we met, and I'm glad I finally said yes to the interview.
Yeah, I hope Sean will see this sometime.
Well, I just love the Lord. I'm excited about the Lord, and I'm happy to talk about him anytime somebody wants to talk about him.
I might, if I find somebody, I might have you interview somebody in the future. Just because you have that vibrant personality, and I can tell people want to open up to you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, will you lead us on a prayer out?
Absolutely. Oh, I got a testimony about... Did I tell you the testimony about the prayer 3 times? I may have told you.
I don't think so.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time, and we just want this to bring you glory, Lord. We want it to bring you the most glory possible. Just please use this video, Lord, to touch whoever you need to touch, Lord, and just let people see what we see, Lord. Let people experience you the way that we get to experience you on such a profound level. It's a beautiful, wonderful process, and we are thankful that you've allowed us to be part of this process, Lord. And we just want to give you all the glory and praise. In your precious name we pray, amen. Thank you.
No problem. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it.
If you want to, you can tell us. Have you talked about the testimony of your prayer yet?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I tell it so much. I love telling testimony, but when I started when God made me do the recovery group, which I did not want to do, He knew I was going to have to pray, and I did not pray out loud. Like my praying is just me talking to God all day, just like I'm talking to you right now. If I'm struggling, I'm like, God, why am I struggling? Can you help me with this or whatever? But just praying wasn't my thing because a lot of times it sounds rehearsed or fake, and I'm not a fake person. Anybody that knows me knows I'm very genuine, and if I feel a certain way, you're going to know it because it's going to just, it's just going to fly out of me. But when He told me to do the recovery group, He knew I was going to have to pray because, when you lead a group, you normally would open and close with prayer. And I wouldn't even pray at my own dinner table with my own family. Like, my husband knew I was basically the spiritual leader of our house, and he always said the prayer at the dinner table. And sometimes he would get frustrated. He's like, you do it. You're the God one. You do it. And I'm like, no. And we would argue at the dinner table about who's going to say the prayer. But when I said yes to the calling of doing the recovery ministry, God knew I was going to have to do that. So he had to prepare me for that. And my babysitter, her husband was in the hospital. And so I called her, being the kind Christian lady that I am, Miss Denise, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything we can do for you guys? You need a meal, you need money, what can we do to help? She said, baby, we got everything we need. All we need is prayer. And I said, okay, as soon as I hang up this phone, I'll pray for you. And if I say I'm going to pray for you, I'm going to do it. I'm not one of the people that just says it and doesn't do it. But she didn't miss a beat. She said, you can go on and do it right now. I was like, oh, man, no. But you can't say no to that. And so I just relaxed and just let God handle it. And I think it must have went well. I don't remember feeling embarrassed or anything about it. But right after that, I went to a church. We had visited the Gap Ministry. And I've come to love them very much. But one of our clients invited us to testimony singing night at the Gap Ministry every first Friday of every month. And these people didn't know us from Adam. And I was there, and at the end of it, the preacher came off stage and came down to me. And she said, God told me to come ask you to pray for my granddaughter who's addicted. And I'm just like, are you serious right now? So I was like, whatever. So I just opened my heart and let it come. And then we had some friends from Mississippi. This happened 3 times in a row. And then we had some friends from Mississippi come to visit us, and we pulled up in the parking lot, and there was this gentleman beside me, and, I was witnessing to him, of course. And so I'm sitting out in the parking lot talking to him, and my husband just excuses himself and goes back in. And, finally, I guess he got tired of waiting on me, so he comes out and he's rushing me. And I'm like, well, you're just going to have to wait. I'm doing God's work. Just, leave me alone. But when I got in there to the dinner table, everybody's doing this. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, well, everybody gripes about who's going to pray over the food at our house. So we just started this thing where the last one at the table doing this has to do it. And I was like, well, how fitting. So I had to say the prayer. But, that was just God's way of preparing me. And if He hadn't done it just like that, I wouldn't have been prepared to pray when the time comes. Of course, I try to always get somebody else to do it if I'll do it. Not that I won't do it or that I don't, want to serve God in that way too. It's just I don't necessarily feel comfortable because I don't want it to seem fake or, I'm just not a faker. I can't fake it, man. I just can't. I'm just a very genuine person, and if I feel a certain type of way about you or whatever, it radiates off of me. My daughter has that, I don't call it a good quality. It's kind of a bad quality, I guess, if you can't fake it sometimes. But I just don't want to be ingenuine, And so it's hard for me to pray out loud in front of people. But I'll do it if necessary. I'll just trust God to handle it. But I just want you to know that I really appreciate this opportunity.
No problem. You helped me so much in so many ways you have no clue.
Well, I want people to feel the way I feel about the Lord. I want them to experience Him the way I've experienced Him. It's I see so many people that say they believe in God, but I don't know that they believe in it quite like I do.
Yeah, they're not very spiritual about it.
It's just like this other level of understanding and trust, and I wish everybody in the world could could have that. And we can. We just have to be willing. You know, the only difference between me and them is they're not willing. You know, you just have to be willing. God will handle everything else. Everything. Every detail. Every detail.
I'm sure they're gonna love you. About like halfway through, I was looking at you. I was like, "Oh my God, they're gonna love her."
Well, it's easy for me to talk about God because I love Him and He loves me right back. And so it's not even, you know, you talked about maybe being nervous or not when I'm talking about God. I'm not. I'm not anxious in this world. I don't worry. You know, it's a pretty good place to be. Like I tell people, man, if you're not on the Jesus train, get on it. It's awesome, you know. And sometimes it gets bumpy. That's okay. You know, you'll get through it. Just stay on there. Don't jump off. Don't jump off too early.
Can you tell them where to find your recovery group?
Well, we are at Spring Lake Church of the Nazarene. I don't know the physical address. I think I sent it to you.
Somewhere in Little Rock. We'll get it up there.
Yeah, it's at East End. And I also attend the one at East Union, and I've been going to it for about 6 years, and I've been doing this for about 1.5 years here. And both groups are very, very filled with the Spirit and a lot of love and a lot of people who will love you. And the more you come, the more those relationships grow. And we just, you know, we just try to share the Lord and what He's done for us and our testimonies and just to love on one another and encourage each other, being that iron that we need to be. But we'd love to have anybody that wants to come.
Well, thank y'all. Welcome to God Science Coffee, and I think that's a wrap. See y'all.
Bye-bye.